The lighting in the Sterling's dining room was perfect. That warm amber glow that makes expensive wine look even more sophisticated and long-term marriages look unbreakable. My name is Julian Vance, and for 12 years I believed I was one half of the latter. My wife Elena sat across from me, the silver candlelight dancing in her dark eyes. We were surrounded by the power couples of Oak Haven, Connecticut. The air was thick with the smell of roasted rosemary and the sound of polite, wealthy laughter. I was happy. That's the hardest part to swallow now. I was sitting there, thinking about how lucky I was to have a woman like Elena by my side as I climbed the corporate ladder. We were the couple people envied. No public fights, no scandals, just 12 years of what I thought was building a legacy. Then, when the conversation shifted to unbreakable bonds, David Sterling leaned back, swirling his 30-year-old scotch. Julian, you and Elena are the blueprint. 12 years in this town, and I've never seen a flicker of doubt between you. What's the secret? Is it the patience? Or did you just find the only woman in America who doesn't hold a grudge? I smiled, feeling a swell of pride. I was about to give a cliché answer about communication and mutual respect, but Elena beat me to it. She didn't even look at me. She didn't even pause her fork. She just stared at her reflection in her wine glass and said, "It's easy to stay committed when you've already decided that the person next to you is just a placeholder for the life you actually wanted." The room went silent, not a polite silence, but a heavy, suffocating vacuum. The clinking of silverware stopped. David's smile froze in a grimace of confusion. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather or the saltiness of the steak. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Welcome to Family Secrets and Revenge. The ride back to our farmhouse in Blackwood was silent. The hum of the tires on the asphalt felt like a countdown. The heater was blasting, but I was shivering. Every time a street lamp flashed light into the car, I glanced at Elena. She was staring out the passenger window, her expression as calm as a frozen lake. "Our placeholder?" I finally managed to whisper. My voice sounded small, cracking under the weight of the last hour. "Is that what I am, Elena? 12 years, our home, the sacrifices I made so you could pursue your art, all of it, just a temporary fix?" She didn't turn around. She didn't even blink. "Julian, don't be dramatic. It was a dinner party. David was being pedantic. People say things to be provocative when the conversation gets boring." "That wasn't provocative," I snapped, the anger finally bubbling over the shock. "That was a confession. You told our oldest friends that our marriage is a lie. You looked me in the eyes this morning and told me you loved me. Then tonight you called me a substitute. Who are you waiting for, Elena? Who is the real life for?" She finally looked at me, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't recognize the woman I married. There was no remorse, just a chilling, vacant exhaustion. "Maybe I'm just tired of pretending that this life in the suburbs, this career of yours, this safety, was ever the plan. You were safe, Julian, and safety is a great placeholder until you're strong enough to seek the fire." I couldn't sleep. The bed felt like it was made of broken glass, while Elena drifted off into a peaceful slumber, as if she hadn't just detonated a nuclear bomb in our living room. I sat in my home office. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of the last 12 years. Was the trip to Tuscany a lie? Was the support she gave me during my father's funeral just a performance? If I was a placeholder, she was waiting for an exit, and an exit requires a destination. I did something I'd never done in our entire marriage. And I opened her laptop. Her password was still our wedding date, an irony that felt like a slap in the face. I expected to find emails or a hidden social media account. Instead, I found a folder buried deep in a hidden system directory titled Project Bluebird. Inside weren't love letters. They were scanned documents, bank statements from a private institution in Zurich I didn't know existed, deeds to a property in Savannah, Georgia, purchased 3 years ago under an LLC. But the thing that broke me? A digital diary stored as a series of encrypted notes. The entry from our 10th anniversary, The night I gave her a 3-carat diamond necklace read, "Another year of playing the part. Julian bought me diamonds. He thinks he's securing our future. He's actually just funding my exit. Honey, 3 more years of his safety, and I'll have enough to never look back." Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. If you found out your spouse had a secret exit fund while you were buying them jewelry, would you confront them immediately or stay quiet to gather more evidence? I stayed up until the sun began to bleed through the blinds of my office. Project Bluebird wasn't just a savings account. It was a blueprint for my destruction. She wasn't just leaving, she was siphoning. Every emergency home repair we had, every investment she suggested we make into her friend's gallery, it was all redirected. I needed professional help. I couldn't go to a standard lawyer yet. I needed to know the who. I contacted Marcus, an old friend from my college days in Boston who now ran a high-end private security and digital forensics firm. "Julian, you look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus said when we met at a dingy diner 2 towns over. "I think I'm married to one, Marcus. I need to know about Project Bluebird and a property in Savannah, and I need to know who Elias Thorne is." The name had popped up in the Project Bluebird files, a recipient of several large wire transfers. The name was familiar, a ghost from Elena's past. He was the first love, the one who supposedly broke her heart in college before she met me. She told me he had moved to London, and they hadn't spoken in 15 years. Marcus looked at his tablet, his brow furrowed. "He's not in London, Julian. He's been in Savannah for 5 years. And here's the kicker. The LLC that owns that Georgia property, it's registered to both of them. They've been building a life together on your dime for half a decade." I had to go back to that house. I had to sit across from her at breakfast and ask how she liked her eggs. I had to kiss her cheek before I left for the office. It was the most grueling performance of my life. Every time she smiled, I saw the Zurich bank statements. Every time she talked about our future vacation to Greece, I saw the deed to the house in Savannah. I was watching a master class in sociopathy. She was warm, she was attentive, she was the Elena I loved. But now I knew the Elena I loved was a character she played to keep the placeholder happy and paying the bills. I started noticing the cracks I had missed before. The way she would tilt her phone away when a text came in. The girls' trips that always seemed to happen when I was at my busiest with quarterly earnings. I realized that my trust hadn't been a virtue. It had been her greatest weapon. If you were in Julian's shoes, forced to live in the same house as the person who was systematically robbing you of your life and money, how long could you keep the act up? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to see who among you has that level of poker face. I sat in my car in the rain after my meeting with Marcus, the neon sign of the diner flickering in the reflection of my windshield. I had 2 choices. I could file for divorce tomorrow, and because of our prenuptial agreement and the way she had obscured the assets, she would likely walk away with half of our current estate plus everything she had already stolen. Or I could make sure that by the time she was ready to leave, there was nothing left for her to take. I called my financial advisor, a man who owed me a few favors. "Leo," I said, my voice cold, "I want to start making some high-risk moves. I want to shift our joint liquidity into a series of offshore opportunities that look legitimate but are designed to fail. And I want to do it in a way that requires Elena's signature on every single document." I was going to lead her into a trap of her own greed. She thought she was siphoning a steady stream. I was going to offer her a flood, then pull the plug. The next evening, I came home with a bottle of champagne, the expensive stuff she liked. "What's the occasion?" she asked, leaning against the marble island in our kitchen. She looked so innocent, so perfect. It made my skin crawl. "I've been thinking about what you said at the Sterlings, about safety and placeholders," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I've been too boring. I found an investment opportunity through a contact in Zurich, a tech startup. It's high risk, but the payout could triple our net worth in 18 months. We could finally retire, move wherever you want, maybe even Georgia." I watched her eyes. There was a flicker, a tiny predatory spark. "Georgia? Why Georgia?" Oh, I don't know, I lied. I've just been hearing the market is booming in Savannah. What do you think? It requires us to move most of our liquid capital. Wait, but the returns are guaranteed by a private equity firm. She didn't hesitate. If you think it's the right move, Julian, I trust you. She signed the papers that night. She thought she was signing for a windfall that would fund her life with Elias. She was actually signing her name to a series of shell companies that I controlled. Companies that were about to lose every cent of our joint wealth. While the financial trap was being set, I needed to deal with the Elias Thorne factor. I couldn't let him just walk away. Marcus tracked him down in Savannah. He wasn't some wealthy artist. He was a failed architect who had been living off the allowance Elena was sending him. I decided to pay him a visit. I told Elena I had a business conference in Atlanta. Instead, I drove straight to Savannah. And the house was beautiful, a historic colonial on a tree-lined street. My money had bought the paint on the walls. My money had bought the vintage Porsche in the driveway. I parked across the street and watched. I saw him come out to get the mail. He looked like a younger, more artistic version of me. He looked like a man who hadn't worked a day in years. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wanted him to feel the walls closing in first. I wanted him to wonder why the wire transfers were starting to get delayed. I returned from Atlanta and began the next phase. I started acting stressed. I let the bills pile up on the counter. I forgot to pay the gardener. Julian, what's going on? Elena asked one morning, holding a late notice from the electric company. The Zurich investment, is everything okay? It's just a temporary cash flow issue, honey, I said, rubbing my temples. The startup is hitting some regulatory hurdles. They've frozen the accounts for an audit. It'll be fine. We just need to tighten our belts for a few months. I watched the panic start to set in behind her eyes. She wasn't worried about us. She was worried about her Project Bluebird timeline. She was worried that her placeholder was running out of ink before she had finished writing her new life. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest. The fact that she was using Julian's money to support her ex, or Julian's cold, calculated way of taking it all back? Share your thoughts in the comments. For the next 3 months, I became a ghost in my own home. I worked late. I came home exhausted, and I watched Elena spiral. She was making more girls' trips, likely flying down to Savannah to reassure Elias that the money would return. Marcus was intercepting her calls now. Elias, just wait, I heard her voice on a recording Marcus played for me. Julian is an idiot. He's obsessed with this Zurich deal. He's put everything into it. Once the audit clears, I'll pull my half and we're gone. I just need him to keep his head above water for 2 more months. I'm running out of cash, El, Elias's voice responded. He sounded whiny and entitled. The contractor for the pool wants payment. Tell him to wait, she snapped. Hearing her call me an idiot should have hurt. Instead, it felt like fuel. I wasn't an idiot. I was the one holding the leash. The Sterlings invited us back for David's birthday. Now it had been exactly 1 year since the placeholder comment. Elena didn't want to go. She was thin, stressed, her eyes darting around every time the phone rang. But I insisted. We have to maintain appearances, Elena, I said. If the bank sees us withdrawing from the social scene, they might get nervous about our credit lines. She agreed, put on her finest dress, the one I bought her for our 5th anniversary, and we went back to the same amber-lit room, the same rosemary scent, the same power couples. But the vibe was different. People knew. Not the details, but they could feel the rot. David didn't ask about our unbreakable bond this time. He asked about the market. I hear you've been making some big moves, Julian, David said, his eyes narrowed. Some risky stuff offshore. You know what they say, David, I replied, looking directly at Elena. Sometimes you have to burn the old house down to see what the foundation is really made of. Elena's glass shook in her hand. The day after the party, I pulled the trigger. I called Leo and had him execute the final loss. The shell companies declared bankruptcy. The joint accounts were drained to zero to cover legal liabilities I had prearranged. I came home and found Elena in the living room, her face white as a sheet. She had her laptop open. Julian, the account, the Zurich account, it's gone. It says the balance is zero. I sat down in the armchair across from her, perfectly calm. I know, the audit didn't go well, Elena. The startup was a fraud. Everything we put in, the house equity, the savings, the retirement funds, it's all gone, she screamed. It wasn't a cry of grief. It was a howl of rage. Aren't you lost it? You lost my money? 12 years of my life for nothing? Your money, I asked, tilting my head. I thought it was our money. Or were you planning on using your half for something else, like a colonial in Savannah? The silence that followed was even heavier than the one at the Sterlings a year prior. She froze. What are you talking about? Project Bluebird, Elena? Elias Thorne, the pool contractor who's waiting for his payment. I know it all. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I laid them on the coffee table one by one. The photos of her and Elias in Savannah, the wire transfer logs, the digital diary entries where she called me a placeholder. You thought you were the one playing the long game, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But you forgot one thing. I'm an accountant. Auto Elena. I track things for a living. I tracked every cent you stole, and then I made sure you invested the rest of it into a hole you can never climb out of. You can't do this, she stammered, the tears finally starting. I'll sue you. I'll take everything that's left. There is nothing left, and I said. The house is leveraged. The accounts are empty. And because you signed every single document for the Zurich deal, you're legally liable for the debt. You're not leaving with a fortune, Elena. You're leaving with a massive tax bill and a boyfriend who won't want you the second he realizes you're broke. The next week was a blur of legal filings. I had already moved my actual personal assets, the ones I had earned before our marriage and kept in a separate trust she couldn't touch, into a secure location. I was fine. She, however, was in freefall. Elias Thorne did exactly what I predicted. The moment Elena called him to say the money was gone and the Savannah house was being foreclosed on, he stopped answering her calls. He was a parasite, and she had run out of blood. She tried to stay in the farmhouse, but I had already sold the deed to a developer. She was served with an eviction notice 2 weeks later. This is the moment of truth in every story of revenge. If you found out your partner was only with you for the money, would you leave them with nothing, or would you give them a small mercy fund just to get them out of your life? I want to see your answers in the comments. This one is personal. I watched from my car as the movers took the last of her things, mostly clothes and some cheap furniture she'd bought recently. The expensive art, the diamonds, the luxury items. I had successfully argued in court that they were purchased with diverted marital assets and were seized to pay off the debts. She stood on the driveway, looking at the house one last time. She looked older. The fire she wanted so badly had burned her to the ground. She looked at my car, knowing I was sitting there, but I didn't roll down the window. I didn't need a final word. The one sentence she said at the dinner party had already said everything that needed to be said. I moved to a small apartment in the city. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't have to worry about being a placeholder. I didn't have to worry about being safe enough for someone else. Marcus and I grabbed a beer a month later. You did it, Julian, he said, shaking his head. I've seen a lot of messy divorces. But I've never seen someone orchestrate a financial vanishing act like that. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I said. I lost a lot of money, sure, but I bought my freedom, and that's a pretty good ROI. I heard through the Oak Haven grapevine that Elena had moved into a small apartment in a rough part of Bridgeport. She was working as a receptionist at a gallery, the kind of job she used to look down on. Elias Thorne had disappeared, likely looking for his next host. 6 months later, I received a letter. It was from Elena. No return address. Julian, it read. You were right. I was a placeholder too. I was holding a place for a version of myself that didn't exist. I thought money and Elias would make me the person I wanted to be. Instead, I'm just here. I'm sorry. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger. I just felt finished. I took the letter, walked to the fireplace of my new home, and watched it turn to ash. The family secrets had been exposed, and the revenge was complete. But the real victory wasn't seeing her suffer. It was realizing that I didn't need her to be happy. I went back to the Sterlings one last time, not as a guest, but to drop off some books David had lent me. Julian, David said, greeting me at the door. We've missed you. How are you holding up? I'm doing great, David, I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it. You know, David said, looking back at his dining room. I've thought about that night a lot. What she said, it changed how I look at my own marriage. It made me realize how fragile all of this is. It's only fragile if it's a lie, I replied. If it's real, it can survive the truth. But if it's a placeholder, it's better to let it go. I walked down the steps of his porch, the crisp Connecticut air filling my lungs. I was no longer a substitute. I was the protagonist of my own life. This has been a journey of betrayal, but more importantly, a journey of finding the strength to fight back when the person you trust most turns out to be your greatest enemy. If this story moved you, or if you've ever felt like a placeholder in your own life, please show your support. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows of a marriage and the calculation